Ladies and gentlemen, here we are again with the live Q&A of our deep dive presentation experts. You have now the opportunity to ask your questions to our experts. We have Colin Sutherland of our founding partner Geotab. We have Luiz Silveira of Philip Morris International. And I hope that we also have Karina Uribe from Pfizer in this room, and you can ask your questions around safety to this panel of experts via the chat function in this tool. So you will see that there is an option, chat. You go in there, you ask your question, and Pascal and myself, we will moderate the little Q&A session. So let's kick off. And I already have a question for Colin Sutherland of Geotab. Colin, I hope that you are doing fine. I think that you are based in Canada. Is that right?
Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, we're doing fine here. Yeah, I'm based in just west of Toronto, Canada.
Okay, perfect. We are talking, of course, about fleet and mobility management and more specifically safety in Latin America. Geotab has been ranked again the #1 telematics company in the world by ABI Research. Congratulations for that. And so a first question around safety and telematics is how to go with the rollout of telematics on a regional or international level. What do you think you can advise to the audience that would like to implement the telematics program over a multitude of countries, and perhaps they need some advice in where to start first or how to make sure that the rollout can be smooth and efficient?
Thank you, Stephen. I'll maybe concentrate on two things that we've learned over the last several years. In total, we have over 100,000 devices deployed from Mexico all the way through Argentina, in Latin America and the Caribbean as well. The two things, if I was to say, is that it's hard when you're speaking in Latin America. It's a number of different countries. Of course, Mexico is unique to Brazil. That's also unique to Central America and then the rest of South America. We often speak with large organizations that have fleets in each individual country. And every individual country fleet manager often wants to do their own thing. And what you need is to establish a purpose from the beginning with technology. It's it sounds obvious. Why are we doing this? I know most of the large fleet organizations that I've spoken to that are in Latin America, with the best of intentions, said we're going to deploy some ERP system or some CRM system, or maybe a telematics system. And they present it, they make the selection of the provider, and then they go to the country managers and they say, here you go. The assumption is that all the countries are going to deploy that technology the same. And then 1 year they check back in with the fleet, say, how are you doing? And they find that they have 10 different incidents or instances of the software. It's not consistent. There's no way to roll up all the reporting for all the countries to a single dashboard report so you can see how are all the countries doing the same. So establishing the purpose and a set of criteria, why are we doing this, is the most important thing that you can do. And again, it sounds obvious, but it is not being done. And whether that's for safety, whether it's specifically to focus on productivity, specifically we're talking about safety here, I think that what we've seen is policy making, the communication from the driver and the manager is so important. It's the most important thing. We have most of our fleet management companies, our fleet partners in Mexico say that they're trying to express the urgency of safety, but the drivers aren't understanding the message. It's not part of what they know. Why are you concerned about my safety? Of course, I'm safe on the road. And yet we see no seat belts. We see vehicles being driven and they're topping over, they're rolling over. We're seeing incidents happen there that are dramatic and need to be improved. And so it's the communication and the purpose that has to be clearly explained, the proper reporting that has to be developed, and that reporting needs to be consistent from one country to another, so the central manager has visibility across all of the countries and can compare one country's performance versus another.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Colin. A question for Luiz Silveira of Philip Morris. Great presentation, Luiz, and welcome to the Fleet LatAm Conference. You mentioned already in the beginning of your presentation that, of course, Philip Morris International is a global company. You have, I think, 24,000 vehicles across the globe. Also many vehicles in Latin America. In what way do you use, let's say, gamification, the stick and the carrot approach to drive driver behavior of your employees in terms of safety?
Okay, thank you for the question. Yeah, I was watching the presentation, the first presentation, and I think was a good idea. It's a good idea to have this gamification. Okay, what we have today is not a gamification, but we have is a reward program for good drivers. So we are using telematics data to give awards for good drivers. But I think it's a good opportunity to use this data for this kind of gamification. We are talking about sales force, okay? Sales, the sales guys, they like competition, right? So it's a good idea. I don't know if I answered this question, but again, I saw this in the first presentation, was very, very good.
Okay, then I'm coming back to Colin Sutherland of Geotab. Indeed, we saw it in the presentation of Neil, of course, that, let's say, technology incentives and perhaps gamification can be inspiring for employees and drivers to do their best also in safety. On the other hand, you could also say that safety is something that should be evident, logic. And so why should you reward people that are doing a good job in terms of safety? Isn't it logic that you are driving safe and you behave safe? You do it also, let's say, in your social context, you do it at home and so on.
Yeah, certainly, it makes logical sense, Stephen. However, it's not. It doesn't work out that way in reality. While for most managers, you think it's obvious that safety should be a priority for the drivers and the employees in the field, I think intuitively drivers feel that they are safe. You know, that why would you drive unsafe? But there are so there's an underlying. In fact, in some cases in fleet, there's a perception among some of the men that are drivers that to be safe conscious is not to be masculine, and I only see this in Latin America. It's a unique behavior in Latin America, this machismo thing. It's if I'm safe, I'm not masculine. Of course I'm safe. I'm just driving behind the wheel. So we have to break that down. And some fleets have been incredibly creative addressing that single issue, talking about it's okay as a man, it's okay to be safe. And they focus on family. So the concept of course I'm safe, my perception is I'm safe. So you don't talk about safety. You talk about, we want you to return home to your family at night. And that is the crystallizing concept that people can understand. Because if you tell somebody you're not safe and you need to have a game in order to be safe, okay, I appreciate that. But of course I'm safe, and I'll choose to whether I engage in the game based on my perception of I'm safe or not. So you have to change the perception. And what has worked in Latin America is the concept of family. And as an employer, I want you to come home safe to your kids and to your wife. And that is a very interesting strategy that, again, it only seems to be applicable in Latin America. It's a unique thing for Latin America. I haven't seen that have to be deployed in any other region in the world.
Sorry, back to Luiz. A question for you, Luiz, and it's linked to also one of the things that you mentioned during your presentation. You mentioned that it's really important to engage leadership and establish governance when you develop a safety program for your company. The question of the audience is linked to the fact, how did you make it happen? What were, let's say, the steps to, let's say, create that governance and to convince your management to go for safety? Or was it something that came from top down?
Yes. Why is important to involve leadership? Because they define priorities. They ask to do your objectives. Okay, so this is very important to create a program with the leaders. So we have safety committees, fleet safety committees, where we start to talk about reward program, penalty programs, and also check data, check collisions, everything. But it's very important to involve leadership. It's very important.
Okay. Pascal, do you perhaps have a question for one of our expert speakers in this Q&A?
Maybe I can find one, yes, based on my past. I would like to understand for a fleet manager, how he managed the program and the relationship in between his leasing provider and his telematic provider. Are they working together or are they working separately? Do they provide recommendations or reports, objectives? Just to understand a little bit how those three parties work together.
And the question is addressed to whom, Pascal?
Both of them, because they are both interested.
Okay. Perhaps we can start with Colin.
I see Karina joined us, so I think it would be great if we heard from Karina as well. As a fleet manager, Karina, you would be able to relate to Pascal's question probably more than I can. I can just simply say to you that the notifications for the driver themselves is really important, Pascal. It's the problem that is unique again. While in some places of the world, drivers have mobile devices that are provided by their employers, often that's not the case. In Latin America, I see audio feedback to the driver being really important. So the speaker speaking to the driver to coach them, how are they doing? If there's a safety incident, possibly even a hijacking incident, like a severe safety incident, how are you dealing with that? We see more audio-visual communications, two-way communications being a priority in Latin America. Again, a unique thing for Latin America, not everywhere else in the world. But Karina, maybe you could also, I don't know whether you heard Pascal's question, but it'd be interesting to hear your feedback.
Yeah. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay.
Hello.
Yeah, I think communication, as you're mentioning, is very important, and yeah, it's correct. In Latin America, face-to-face communication with drivers, it's very important for them. In my experience, when you have also your supervisor coming to you and talking to you about the programs of the company, or even if you have a collision and talking a little bit more in short term with them helps a lot. But yeah, leadership teams or management, your director, if they talk to you, it's more clarity for them, and it's more efficiency. Yeah.
Okay. Luis, do you have something to add to what Colin and Karina already told around the question of Pascal?
Yes. In an example, in Brazil, the fleet management is part of another area, and fleet safety is another area. So we have a good relation. We need this good relation in order to get all information from the fleet area. And also the fleet area needs to have this good communication relation with the leasing company, the telematics supplier. Everything needs to be together, everything together. So that's my point related to the question.
Okay, perfect. Another question for Geotab in this case. Neil, your CEO, Colin, was presenting some information around mapping hazardous areas. Is that based on telematics data of, let's say, one or a few specific companies, or is it based, let's say, on a multitude of companies, of customers that you have within Geotab, and that based on all those data, you can come out with a sort of interesting benchmarking data report for the industry, for the fleet managers?
Yeah, so Neil's referring to our aggregate anonymous data. So certainly on a fleet-by-fleet basis, we're able to help them with their individual data. But in Latin America, we have such a large data size now with over 100,000 vehicles. that now we have aggregate anonymized data. So now as an individual fleet, you can benchmark your fleet's needs and how your vehicle is moving around in relation to other regions. From a mapping perspective, even in the planning phase, we understand that in a country like Mexico, it is such a diverse, large country, and some regions are more dangerous to go than other cities, city urban areas, which are less dangerous. And so even the deployment of the vehicles and where assets move, and we've experienced things like stolen vehicles, and we understand the hazardous zones where often stolen vehicles are recovered. So you can map out those areas. And again, that's anonymized data from a lot of vehicles, a lot of different companies aggregated together. So now we can create those dangerous hotspots, which are high risk areas. Those are all important, very important concepts. Again, you would need to create a large enough data pool to be able to go and share that anonymously. But we're successful because we've got that size of a pool today.
Okay, an interesting question, perhaps that Luis and Karina, that some of you can answer the question. Are there any countries in Latin America where charging penalties to the drivers for bad driving behavior and having the drivers paying for these penalties to the company is illegal? So in Europe, for example, when you are driving your car and you do something wrong, then of course you need to pay yourself. But is it also the case in Latin America, or are there any countries that you know where it's illegal to let the driver pay if the vehicle is owned by the company?
Can I add something related to the last question or last? In our case in Brazil, the danger risk areas, right? What Colin mentioned. Also, with our program in Brazil, the pilot that we are doing now, it's interesting that we are receiving feedback from the drivers relate to those dangerous areas. Like I will give an example. A driver asked us to change the speed limit in the system because the speed limit was so like 20 or 30 kilometers per hour, was so dangerous to drive in this speed. Then he asked us to change, because if he drives in this speed like 30, it's danger for him. So in some points, the system, we need to check the system and check the telematics if the speed is right, it's okay or not for the driver. So it's very important to receive feedback from the drivers. Okay. But relate to the penalties. We are not the drivers. They pay or they are charged when they receive a fine related to something that it's related to fine. It's from the government, okay, official penalty. But regarding the telematics, no, we are now doing this pilot in Brazil, and then we have all the other countries doing the same project, is giving points or giving this reward for good drivers, but they are not paying, or they are not giving us money from the telematics data. Okay, just legal or official fines. Okay.
Do you have something to add, Karina?
Yeah, in our case, also employees pay for their fines and infractions. And only the one thing that we have in our program is about collisions. If they have more than 2 or 3 collisions, now they will be paying the part of the deductibles, maybe 50% of the deductibles for repair the vehicle, but not as a payment for telematic data.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Another question for you, Karina. Is related to the industry you are working in. The question is, generally in the pharmaceutical market, there is some kind of special attention in terms of the labor units and the work councils, and it's not always easy to implement a program like telematics, where you are going to have sometimes the impression of Big Brother. Can you tell the audience what efforts that you have done, that you did do, let's say, to advise the leaders in your countries to make the telematics program happen?
Yeah, in Pfizer, we are in that phase right now because, as you say, due to the labor conditions, at this point we haven't done telematics yet because of the personal information, as you mentioned. So we are building that kind of business case today. We are benchmarking the other industries, other pharmas, so we can have more data to go to the leadership team at this point. But yeah, you are right. We have that special situation in pharmaceutical companies.
Okay. Another question for the three of you is linked to, let's say, more the lobbying part, that perhaps in big organizations like Geotab, Philip Morris, and also Pfizer can be done. The question is related to the fact that some of the governments, some of the authorities are probably not always aware of the importance that technology on the one hand and obliging some kind of safety and good driver behavior, that can result in, let's say, cost savings, more productivity, it's good for the environment, and so on. So the question is, what kind of initiatives, what kind of communication do you establish or can you establish to the leaders in the countries in Latin America? It's perhaps a difficult question, but is there someone that would like to say something?
It is a difficult question from a leadership perspective. So it's actually not that laws don't exist even. In Mexico, for example, there is already a driving log for truckers that requires them to rest, just like there is in Europe with tachograph, just like there is in the United States with electronic logging. It's just simply not reinforced. So there's no enforcement of the law. So I think that it's not so much the discussion that with the leadership isn't so much let's create laws similar to those in Europe or even in the United States that have been proven successful to keep truck drivers aware and on the road safely. I think it's an enforcement discussion. So then how do you have that discussion with enforcement? Who is responsible for enforcement? And ultimately, at the end of the day, I think what we have found is that the enforcement goes with money. And that doesn't mean that you have to pay off the government officials. That's not what I'm saying. But it's the same thing with writing tickets. If I have a speeding ticket, I get fined and I have to pay my fine. The police forces around the world generate revenue from speeding tickets. So the idea is that if in an economy that is suffering right now, as we try to recover from this economy, and every government, every municipality, every city in the world is struggling to find dollars. I think that there may be an opportunity, if there is such a thing called an opportunity, to talk about enforcement of safety regulations by fining businesses that are not doing the right thing or by drivers that are maybe driving improperly. Reinforce the law already there and impose fines, write tickets, get money for that, and then maybe we'll create a safer place. And I think that maybe is a dialogue that is constructive. It's not that maybe political lobbying topic. It's actually more about an enforcement topic. That's my personal opinion.
Okay. Karina, do you have something to say?
Yeah, I have the same perspective. It's not only the internal perspective or that we can go to the leadership and convince. It's more about the laws that we have in Latin America still. They are not too mature as we have in another regions in Europe. So yeah, we are facing with that situation still a lot in Latin America. So I would say that, yeah, it's more about the law situation, governments, more than the internal situation of the companies.
Okay. Pascal, do you have another question?
Can I?
Yeah.
Luis, yes,
Yeah,
of course.
I don't have the answer for this, but I think in the past we can remember in the past that seat belt was not mandatory. Okay, so we now is mandatory, but and now is a behavior, right? It's a normal behavior to use seat belt. Airbag, it's another. In the past, airbag was very expensive. Okay, now all cars needs to have airbags. So probably in the future, all cars needs to have telematics, right? So I think it's today's price. Okay, is the price of the car, and also it's not. We can see a lot of companies or people they don't know what is telematics, what is the benefit from telematics. So with this kind of conference that we are participating, it's the way to show how important is telematics for fleet and companies. Okay, so we are starting. That's my.
Okay, thank you. Perhaps a final question asked by Pascal.
I think we have been covering most of the information. Maybe one question about the key objective. Is it about lives? Is it about costs? I think it's an interesting question in the context of the COVID. What matters us with security? Is it a cost issue or is it a human issue?
Karina, perhaps to start.
Yeah, Pascal, but you mean about it's more if what problems we face more about if it costs or?
Yeah, actually, it's a bit of philosophy. I think it's mainly for a company a cost issue, and the human issue is a given issue. So I think the interesting point is to understand which KPI you are using for your security issues, because the strange point is that security is about human lives and making sure you go back and you find your family. This is what you want. But to do that, you will probably use KPI, which are more in the economic area, like how much I saved because of and of and of. This is what I wanted to ask you.
Well, yeah, in our case, well, we try to balance that situation. Of course, we try for company perspective, of course, cost and liability is very important for us, and we track those kind of KPIs. But in the other hand, for your employees, also it's very important to follow the injuries, fatalities, all that part of your employees, because they also have to know the efforts, the performance that we are giving for them. So we try to make a balance in both sides, at least part.
Okay, we need to close this live Q&A. It was an engaging discussion, and I would like to thank Colin Sutherland of Geotab, Luiz Roberto Silveira of Philip Morris International, and of course, Karina Uribe of Pfizer. Thank you very much for being part of the Fleet LatAm Conference 2020, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.